So I kind of feel like I'm eating my words today.
There's going to be a lot of clapping in this video because we are going to be getting so much reading done. You know those readers with like the superpower of reading like 15 books in a month? We are going to be one of those people.
I might have been just a little bit too confident. Hi everyone, my name is Holly, and in today's video I am going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in March. So I hope that I at least gave you guys the confidence to read as much as you could this month, because I sure didn't listen to my advice. And that is not to say that I didn't read a lot this month, because I did, but I always tend to forget that I read a lot of adult fantasies that are over 500 pages, and my YA brain tends to like to manhandle my TBR. So the very first book that I'm going to be talking about is actually the most recent book that I finished, but I loved it so freaking much that I need to mention it now. And that is Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. This is technically book 6 within the First Law universe, and books 4, 5, and 6 are considered standalones, so I will be handling this review as such, but I will always consider these as the second First Law trilogy. So in this book, Joe Abercrombie pays homage to the Western genre, and reading the dedication in this book makes that very clear. Abercrombie starts this book by saying, "For Teddy and Clint Eastwood, but since Clint probably ain't that bothered, mostly Teddy." There's that Joe Abercrombie humor. Now, I can't remember for the life of me if I've ever read a Western book. I don't think I have, and I don't really care for Western movies unless Joe Abercrombie was producing it. But what he does in this freaking book is brilliant. This story takes place in an imaginary Wild West, and we are in a totally different location that we've never been in. It's kind of abandoned with these little towns sprinkled throughout, and we're following our main protagonist, whose name is Shy, and she's kind of this young, feisty country girl, and she has been raised by a man named Lamb, which, oh my god, I don't want to give any spoilers here, but that freaking character, if you've read the original trilogy, you are going to be so hyped. And I truly think that's why I loved this book so much, because of this character. Thank you, Joe Abercrombie. So Shy's siblings are kidnapped, and she and Lamb set off to go find them, and their adventure is just so fun. At one point they run into this like traveling wagon train. It reminded me of like a traveling circus, and it's like the biggest part of their transportation, and it's also where we meet a lot of new characters with such vivid personalities. Easily 5 out of 5 stars. I swear, Joe Abercrombie keeps upping the ante in every single novel that he writes, and this one had everything that I could possibly want. The next book that I read was Uncanny Collateral by Brian McClellan. Brian himself actually contacted me and asked me if I would like to review his new urban fantasy series, and I was like, heck yes, I would love to review it. And I did. This book is being self-published, and it's coming out on April 2nd, and I would describe this 150-page novel as Men in Black. It's literally a laid-back Men in Black with a hipster protagonist. So we're following our main protagonist, Alec, who is a reaper who works for this debt collection agency for the supernatural. When he and his friend Maggie, who by the way is this genie trapped inside the ring that he has on, is put on a mission by Death himself to find out who has been stealing souls, well, they get more than they're bargained for. Alec is a really interesting character. He has a little bit of troll in him, so when he gets really angry, he has his tusks that come out, and they actually puncture his lip, and he has tattoos all over his arms that have special powers, most of them good. The one bad one is that he has a barcode that he got when he was an infant that his boss that owns him is actually able to cause him pain through. So we do get some nice backstory, which adds a lot of dimension. The story is actually set in modern day Ohio, which is where I live, so it was really interesting to read an urban fantasy set in the state that I live in, and it mixes supernatural and modern day really well. So like I said before, this book is 150 pages, and there is so much happening that it's kind of a good thing and it's kind of a bad thing. Good thing because it's really fast paced and there's really no room to breathe. Bad thing though because since the characters are constantly moving from point A to point B to point C to point D, I didn't really have enough time to settle into a location. Alec would drive to his office and then drive to his bar, and then he would drive to a graveyard, and then he would drive to like 3 or 4 houses. It allowed it to be a page turner and also for the mystery to evolve very quickly, but it was just so go 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 and my brain was like stop stop stop. There is a lot of fight scenes and a lot of like punching in this novel, which I found quite funny, and it does have a solid storyline. All in all, I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. I still really enjoyed it, and it was a nice break from all of the fictional fantasy worlds that I've been in lately. So yeah, check this one out if you are interested. The next book that I read was The Borrow by Mark Smiley. So I have an entire reading vlog completely focused on this book, and I'll link that down below for you if you are interested, which you should be because it's titled I Read the Dirtiest Book That I Own. So if you're a perv like I am, welcome people. So this is a high fantasy novel following a crew of scoundrels who discover this map that supposedly leads to this fabled sword in the tomb of a long dead wizard. It turns out that the map is cursed and they destroy it, but suddenly the map ends up reappearing in a very unexpected place, and I will not say where that unexpected place is because I had no idea, and it was a really nice surprise to the plot line, so you'll have to find out for yourself. This book is really interesting, kind of collecting all of the really good elements from D&D and mixing it with like the dirtiest, darkest, and grimmest parts of fantasy. There is a lot of graphic sex in this, including incest, rape, bestiality. The trigger warnings for it is through the roof, including a unicorn horn scene, which I had a strong reaction to in my reading vlog. A lot of it is very violent and is not for the faint of heart. It does not shy away from any type of dark concepts, but somehow I loved it. Even after all of the very dark stuff that this book has, it also contains just your classic sword and sorcery elements that I love in fantasy so much. We follow a very coarse, morally gray but engaging characters who are all so freaking disgusting, but that made them to be interesting. Our main protagonist is educated and well-traveled, and he literally knows every single character that we run into, including like half a way across the map he runs into a stranger in the middle of nowhere and they know each other by name. And it didn't make it seem out of place. Like, of course he'd know some random person in the wasteland. All in all, I found this to be surprising as fork. I loved it. It has such pulse-pounding action, specifically the very beginning. It's one of the most explosive like introductions I've read in a very long time. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The story is weird and gross, but I found it to be wonderfully written. The next book that I have here is The Hammer of Thor by Rick Riordan. This is book 2 within the Magnus Chase series. Since this is book 2, I'm going to review this without any spoilers, so even though I'm going to be a little bit vague, I did like the first one a lot better than I did this one, and I'm going to explain my reasons on that front. So this book starts off with a quest, that typical Rick Riordan formula, and it's all about Magnus Chase having to find Thor's hammer. The title makes sense, right? We also get to meet a new very important character named Alex, who becomes Magnus's sidekick, and she is gender fluid, so she switches between male and female, which I thought was a really bold move by Riordan, but it worked very well. For some reason, this sequel in particular totally made me realize how much this plot has been recycled. It's fun, his books always are, but I found this one to be extra predictable. I knew from the very beginning what was going to happen at the end, and when we got to the end, it was a little bit underwhelming, but the adventure along the way is still very exciting and very exhilarating and funny. Oh, and the culture references in this book. I've seen people review this saying that this book will be outdated in 5 to 10 years. And you're right, it's already outdated. Rick Riordan mentioned Vine 3 times in this book, and Vine is dead. So it's already in that death stage. I still really like this. I went into it wanting to know more about Magnus and his friends chasing after Loki and trying to stop him before he started Ragnarok. It's one of those middle books in a trilogy. It definitely felt like that, but I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. And the next book that I have is The Ship of the Dead, book 3 in the Magnus Chase series. I gotta say, this one captivated me much more quickly than the first 2. After 3 books, these characters form this little family of their own, and Magnus just shows them how much they mean to him, and it was so cute. This book has all the same action and adventure. It has all of the great representation that's been evident throughout the entire series. Each one of them is so different and have made a special place in my heart. They are like my children. Oh, and plus the Percy cameos. I cannot be more excited to go into Trials of Apollo, because at the end of this book, it foreshadowed something that's happening in that series, and I need to know if my boy is okay. Something bad is happening at Camp Half-Blood, and I cannot take this ominous news. I ended up giving this one 4.5 out of 5 stars, and now I can go on to Trials of Apollo and find out if everyone is okay. The next book that I read was Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. So I finally got around to finishing one of Mark Lawrence's most famous books of all time, and I have a little bit of mixed feelings. It's all about a young prince named Jorg who experiences a very tragic event after witnessing the murder of his mother and brother. He runs away from his castle with a highway band of robbers. This crew of characters rapes, kills, and burns basically everything in their path. I'll admit though, I have read so much more darker books than this, especially since grimdark has kind of become its own subgenre. I mean, after reading The Borrowed, this book was not bad whatsoever, and that scares me for my future. I have been tainted. One of the things, Jorg does not feel like a 14-year-old boy, even when the story goes to when he's 9 years old. He doesn't feel like he's 9. I mean, the story is his main point of view, so we get to see his inner thoughts, and he's basically a 40-year-old man. I still love him, but I found it very hard to picture him as a child the whole time. There's no female characters, there's no subplots, which as a very avid fantasy reader, that is something that I very much look forward to. I love a lot of depth and quest that the characters can go on to, and the simple plot line was a bit of a negative for me. I did enjoy this book. I feel like when I mention these negatives, that's what you guys are really going to cling on to in this review, but I did enjoy it. I love the world setup, and the world that Jorg lives in is kind of apocalyptic. Jorg also discovers some really weird artifacts, and like, I got science fiction vibes in this, and I'm so excited. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, so I really need to pick up book 2. I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, guys. There were just those negatives in the simple plot line that held me from giving it 5 stars. I just wanted more. And the final book that I read in March was Irons of Volume 1. Okay, so this graphic novel is some Final Destination crap. One of my worst fears, it starts out like that with a family sitting in traffic when suddenly the structure of the bridge is compromised and it falls apart. No, get me out. And unfortunately, the dialogue got a bit cheesy for me at this point, and it became a little bit unrealistic. This family is literally sinking to the bottom of the ocean. RIP. And the father just starts calculating like water pressure and all of this weird science crap, and I'm just like, dude, stop being a calm human and panic. Because literally, me being a reader, I was panicking. After a very dramatic escape, the perspective changes to a man named Jack Irons, who literally looks like Saitama from One Punch Man, by the way. He builds bridges, and he gets tasked to solve the mystery on why this bridge fell apart in the first place, because the cameras caught some very suspicious explosions. I'm not quite sure if I was the right audience for this, unfortunately. I found it very tedious to read and not interesting whatsoever. I mean, the closest building I have ever come to is freaking Minecraft. I will build you a rad house in Minecraft, but this was just not for me. I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. I just found it overall very lackluster. Alrighty, so those were all of the books that I read in March. Tell me down below what you read because I would love to know. Go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up because it helps me out so much. And don't forget to subscribe. I upload videos every single week. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram at HollyHeartsBooks, on Twitter at HollyNiece. And until we meet again, happy reading.